Listen up, Cowboys Nation, because what I'm about to tell you is going to change everything you thought you knew about this team's offseason strategy. And trust me, when I say Jerry Jones might actually be ready to do something we haven't seen in over a decade. Before we dive into all of this, make sure you hit that subscribe button because we break down every single Cowboys update the moment it happens, and you do not want to miss what's coming next for this franchise. So here's the situation that nobody is really talking about right now, and it involves the draft, free agency, and some potential blockbuster moves that could completely transform this defense. The Cowboys are sitting at pick 12, and there's been a ton of speculation about whether teams might want to trade up to grab one of the top offensive tackles in this class. One report suggested that a team drafting in the mid to late teens could have serious interest in moving up, which would potentially net Dallas a second-round pick on top of keeping their first-rounder. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the trade value to move from, say, pick 17 or 18 up to 12 would cost roughly 2 second-round picks and a third, or something equivalent in value. That's a massive haul if the Cowboys can pull it off. But here's what nobody is talking about, and this is the part that should get every Cowboys fan excited. What if Dallas doesn't trade back at all and instead gets aggressive, going the other direction? There's been chatter about potentially packaging picks 12 and 20 to move up and target one of the elite edge rushers or defensive playmakers in this class. The name that keeps coming up is David Bailey. And let me tell you, this kid is special. He's got the kind of explosive first step that translates immediately to the NFL, and he fits exactly what new defensive coordinator Christian Parker is looking for in his scheme. But, and this is a big but, some league insiders believe Bailey might not even make it to pick 12, which means the Cowboys could be looking at a scenario where they need to trade up to get their guy. Now let's talk about something that's going to blow your mind, because there's been legitimate discussion about Dallas potentially pursuing Max Crosby in a trade. I know it sounds crazy, but think about it for a second. The Raiders are in full rebuild mode, and Crosby is the exact type of proven pass rusher that could instantly elevate this Cowboys defense from mediocre to elite. The price tag would be astronomical. We're talking about 2 first-round picks, plus potentially a quality starter going back the other way. But here's the thing. When you compare the ceiling of a draft prospect to a guy who you already know is a double-digit sack superstar, it changes the calculus completely. Would you rather roll the dice on a rookie becoming that caliber of player, or would you pay the premium for the sure thing? That's the question Jerry Jones and the front office have to answer. And the crazy part is, there's actually been some smoke around this possibility, with recent updates suggesting the Cowboys are at least entertaining the idea of making a splash move. Now let's shift gears and talk about what might be the most important topic of this entire offseason, and that's whether Jerry Jones is finally going to break his pattern of being cheap in free agency. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, the Cowboys have not signed an outside free agent to a deal worth more than $6 million per year in over a decade. Let that sink in for a moment. In an era where quarterbacks are making $50 million and edge rushers are getting $25 million per year, Dallas has consistently refused to pay market value for outside talent. But here's where things get really interesting, because multiple reports are now suggesting that the Cowboys might actually be willing to spend real money this offseason. We're talking about deals in the $15 million per year range, which would be nearly triple what they've historically been willing to commit to free agents. Is this the move Dallas has to make if they want to be taken seriously as contenders? I think the answer is absolutely yes. The roster has too many holes to fill through the draft alone, and at some point you have to open up the checkbook and pay for proven talent. Now, there's been a lot of speculation about specific targets, and one name that keeps coming up is George Pickens. Yes, that George Pickens, the explosive wide receiver who could be available via trade. League insiders have suggested that the Cowboys are at least entertaining the idea of acquiring him potentially through a tag and trade scenario. Now, I want to be clear, this is still very much in the rumor category and nothing has been confirmed, but the fact that Dallas is even considering this type of move shows a potential shift in philosophy. The key here is that any trade for Pickens would need to make sense from a value standpoint. If a team offers just a second-round pick, that's probably not enough to justify giving up on a receiver of his caliber. But if someone gets desperate and throws a massive asset package at you, then suddenly it becomes a conversation worth having. This brings me to something that's been frustrating Cowboys fans for years, and that's the linebacker situation. Right now, the depth chart at linebacker is concerning, to put it mildly. The current starters haven't proven they can be reliable every down players. And while there's hope that a new coaching staff might help guys like DeMarvion Overshown develop, you cannot enter the season banking on unproven players suddenly figuring it out. This is why the draft becomes so critical. Names like Kalen Teasy Allen and Jacob Rodriguez keep coming up as potential targets, and for good reason. These are guys who can come in day one and make an immediate impact on a defense that desperately needs playmakers at the second level. But here's the dilemma the Cowboys face. They need help at corner, and they need help at safety, and they need help at edge rusher, and they need help at linebacker. That's 4 major positions of need on defense alone, and you only have so many draft picks to work with. This is exactly why free agency spending becomes so important. If you can address even 1 or 2 of those needs through veteran signings, it takes so much pressure off your draft board and allows you to truly take the best player available rather than reaching for need. Speaking of the draft, let me paint you a dream scenario that has Cowboys fans absolutely buzzing. Imagine Dallas stays at pick 12 and Kalen Downs falls right into their lap. This is a player that many evaluators believe is the best overall prospect in the entire class. He's got elite instincts, incredible range, and the type of football IQ that translates immediately to the NFL. Getting him at 12 would be an absolute steal. Then at pick 20, you grab C.J. Allen, the second best linebacker in the class, who would pair perfectly with Overshown to give you a completely revamped linebacking core. Is this realistic? Honestly, probably not, because Downs is likely going to be a top 10 pick, but if the board falls right, this could be the kind of draft that changes the trajectory of the franchise for the next 5 years. Now let's talk about the coaching staff for a minute, because I know a lot of fans are still trying to figure out what to expect from this new regime. The hire of Christian Parker as defensive coordinator has been mostly well received, but there are still questions about scheme fit and player development. One interesting subplot is the nickel corner position, and where Darren Bland fits into everything. If Bland slides inside to play nickel, that opens up a need for an outside corner, which brings us back to the draft and potential targets like Colton Hood or some of the other day 2 corner prospects. The beauty of this situation is that the Cowboys actually have some flexibility here. They can go multiple different directions depending on how free agency plays out and what happens with the board on draft day. But here's what concerns me, and I think this is something every Cowboys fan needs to be paying attention to. The margin for error is incredibly small this offseason. You cannot afford to whiff on your first-round picks. You cannot afford to be cheap in free agency again. You cannot afford to enter the season with the same holes that plagued this team last year. The pressure is on Jerry Jones and the front office to prove that they've actually learned from past mistakes and are willing to do what it takes to build a championship contender. Now, I want to address something that came up in recent discussions about potential trades involving current roster players. Some fans have been asking whether the Cowboys should consider moving one of their defensive linemen for additional draft capital. The short answer is probably not. The team has made it clear that guys like Kenny Clark, Osa Odigizua, and Quinnen Williams are viewed as foundational pieces moving forward. These are players you build around, not players you ship out for draft picks. The only way I could see a trade making sense is if someone comes with a ridiculously overpay offer that you simply cannot refuse. Outside of that scenario, expect the defensive line to remain intact heading into the season. Let me circle back to the edge rusher discussion, because this is something that's going to dominate Cowboys headlines for the next few months. The need is real and urgent. You look at the top teams in the NFL, and they all have elite pass rushers who can win one-on-one matchups and collapse the pocket. Dallas simply doesn't have that right now. Whether the solution comes through the draft via free agency or through a blockbuster trade, this has to be priority number one. Names like Jalen Phillips have been mentioned as potential free agent targets, and I love the fit there. Yes, there are injury concerns, and yes, the price tag might be higher than what the Cowboys have historically been willing to pay, but this is exactly the type of player who can be a difference maker. You pair a healthy Jalen Phillips with the young talent already on the roster, and suddenly this defense looks completely different. But here's what nobody is talking about, and this might be the most important point of this entire video. The Cowboys' window is right now. Dak Prescott isn't getting any younger. CeeDee Lamb is in his prime. The pieces are there on offense to compete with anyone. What's been missing is a defense that can get stops when it matters most, and that requires investment. Real, actual financial investment in proven players who can come in and make an immediate impact. If Jerry Jones continues to penny pinch and try to build through the draft alone, this team is going to continue spinning its wheels and watching other franchises compete for championships. I want to hear from you, Cowboys Nation, because this offseason is going to define the next era of Dallas Cowboys football. Do you think Jerry finally opens up the checkbook and spends real money in free agency? Do you think the Cowboys should trade up in the draft to get their guy, or should they stay patient and let the board come to them? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because I read every single one, and I want to know what moves you would make if you were running this franchise. Before you go, make sure you're subscribed because we've got so much more Cowboys content coming, and you do not want to miss a single update. This offseason is going to be absolutely wild, and we're going to be here breaking down every signing, every trade, and every draft pick the moment it happens. The Cowboys are at a crossroads right now, and the decisions they make over the next few months are going to determine whether this team is a legitimate Super Bowl contender or just another disappointing season waiting to happen. I believe in this coaching staff, and I believe that Jerry Jones finally understands what needs to happen. But talk is cheap, and actions speak louder than words. Let's see if they actually back it up with real moves this offseason. Drop a comment with your dream draft scenario, and let's keep this conversation going, Cowboys Nation.